Welcome back to the release notes on xLights Gen. We got 2025.02 out just shortly after 2025.01. Um, got a few features there to cover off, but just a reminder that if you're running an older version of xLights, you might not be able to get it through the check update screen. You may have to come here and hit the download page right off of xlights.org. There was a change in the hosting website that broke the check updates to work from the older versions. It works going forward, but you have to be running something quite recent, either the 2025 versions or one of the last couple of versions in 2024 for the check updates to actually find the updates. So if you're not seeing the check updates, just go over to xlights.org and get that. So let's go through the release notes. If I recall from last time, 2025-01, Dan put in some new coding um, techniques, ISPC. Generally, that is a parallelism compiler that can take code and make it parallel. He set it up specifically for the Mac and the Linux environment, so it's sort of a special case. If you're getting some bugs as he irons out that change, you may see some peculiarities on the Mac side of things that we don't see on the Windows side of things. So I can't really demo them, but we can certainly talk to them. For example, this one right here, the first one on the list, is fixes some crashes. And quite frankly, that's why the 25.02 came out so quickly, is because he really wants to get these crashes and these bugs out of the way so that everybody has a good xLights experience. So yeah, so fix some crashes with the canvas mode, and that's done behind the scenes. Um, he cleaned up the recent sequences. So if you do a batch render and you're batch rendering like 50 sequences, and then if you went into open recent sequences, it would show all those batch rendered sequences in there. So he just removed that. So it only shows sequences that you've actually opened and worked on. So as he says, it was polluting the list. So he's got rid of that. We noticed that after the 2501 came out, that the new check sequence wasn't working for all folks. It wasn't working specifically if you had a space in your show folder name. So I've corrected that. So that should work. We haven't got confirmation yet if this works, if this change works for the Linux folks. So if we can get some feedback from you guys, that'd be great. Another fix for the ISPC code. Some people noticed on the Mac that they weren't seeing their sparkles and such. That was an ISP bug that was corrected in this version. Um, Aliases were not properly being removed. If you remember from 2501, there was a new script added into run scripts to delete all aliases. And if you haven't seen the '01 release video, you would know that you might not know that you have to go to the download and you can pull these scripts from the system to pull it into your system. So there's one there to delete all the aliases if you want to basically start from scratch on those. This one was kind of fun. People were reporting this one on Facebook. Fix background display issues and fragments when using the single strand effect. So that was a bug that was created in one of the last versions on 2024, but apparently nobody noticed it until the last week or two, and everybody was reporting and saying, "Hey, what's going on with these effects?" So first of all, background images. There's a couple things here. I'm just going to drop this in here. You see that it creates basically a sample of what this will render out to your display. So there's these have been around here for a number of years, but not all of the effects had them. So here's color wash, for example, the on effect. Pretty boring as that, although we added a feature here that it would now show the color gradient. So if I put the color gradient, it would show that there. But specifically, the single strand effect was causing weird, just shots of graphics that was spilling out all over your screen. So that really messed it up for most folks. Um, for this, you have the option to turn off this feature. And for some folks, they find it's just too intensive on their machine, so they just decide to turn it off. It's under effects grid, icon background. So if you turn that off, click OK, you'll see it gets rid of all this. I like to leave it on personally because this way you can tell the difference between effects. So I'm just going to put it back on. I'll show you what I mean. File preferences, turn it back on. There's also another thing that I'll touch back in the release notes that was added here. Turn off this group effect indicator. So I'll talk to that in a second, but that's the preference. This yellow mark here means there is an effect on this group. So there's this yellow mark will show up on any line where there's effects. So I'll speak to that in a second in the read in the notes. But anyway, if you have two color washes here, you can quickly see Control C, Control V, Control V, Control V. You can quickly tell that those are all the exact same color washes. So if you were making a sequence and you had a blue in there, you say, "Oh, wait a second, this one looks different than this one," and you would be able to spot right away that either you made a typo or you need to change something. So it does have some benefits to showing to you. It's not just there for eye candy. So going back here, uh, fixing mapping the mesh objects for moving heads, the object that shows the moving head on your discrete on your screen, it basically would make sure that the object is actually pulled into your show folder, and especially helpful if you're importing from other show folders. Don't report if the sketch effect background is missing. So there is basically a template that's used in a sketch effect. If I show you that, it's I can't spell here. Sketch effect is this guy here. So the sketch effect. I won't actually show you how to do the sketch effect, but there's a background image that's only used to design your sketch effect. It's not really needed for your sequence once a sequence vendor has created it. It's just there to help you know what they used to create it or trace. Maybe they traced out a logo or a tree. Um, but for some vendors, they don't want to include it because it may be copyrighted images and such. So they'd rather just not include it. So before it would flag it and yell at you and say, "Hey, there's missing an effect." Well, now we're not going to yell at you because maybe you just don't want to include it. So it's not mandatory. There was a long time bug with one of the scripts that says to create a new sequence. Um, I can't really demoing it, but it's essentially going to do a new sequence. Discard this. But the problem was when it ran the script, it actually showed this pop-up logo, and there was no way to actually click the done button. So the script wasn't meant to pop up that dialog box. So now the script has been modified so that it doesn't pop up the dialog box, so that you can create a new sequence through scripting in the Lua scripts. Limit the splitter on the submodel dialog. So that is a GUI thing we're trying to fix and try to address. And so if I pick any kind of, there we go, submodels, and these ones are very tricky to solve, but hopefully what we're trying to do is make sure that you can't collapse it so that it doesn't disappear. You always get these buttons. Hopefully we didn't cause more issues than we solved here, but that was the intent, to make sure that these buttons don't disappear. And notice that you do have a couple things here. You can make this bigger, this smaller, and if this is too big, you can see it creates, if I go here, it creates a scroll bar here. So the real issue that we were trying to solve was before it would hiding the first 4, 5, 6, 7 characters, and these would basically be hidden underneath this heading line, and therefore it was basically impossible to use because you couldn't see the numbers. So hopefully this is addressing that issue. So that was on the submodel dialog here. Go back to the notes. Discovered. So Alex is making some changes on the Discovery tab. So if you hit the Discover now, I'm not going to do it because it takes 10, 15, 20 seconds. When it finds an FPP instance, it's going to default to the xLights only setting instead of active. xLights only means for an FPP, it means they have an SD card. They don't need to be told what to play or what data to play. They only need to be told what to play. So the only person that can speak to an FPP um, controller is xLights. Otherwise, it has all the data that it needs. So the other option is active. So that's like a Falcon or an Experience or a Genius that doesn't have an onboard SD card and needs to be sent all of the data real time as the sequence playing. So those are the two options. So if you see here, right there, it's right on xLights only. It's also available on a right click option. So the only thing that's changed here is when you hit the discover, If it finds an FPP, if it finds an FPP, it will change it to xLights only by default. You always can change it. If you're an xScheduler user who likes to push data to your Pi controllers, jump on board with the master remote. But if you're not, you can always change it to active. And I just explained this was that preference there that hides the yellow marks for groups. So if you have large groups, you might find that as a tool to speed up your sequences and when you're scrolling up and down the thing. This was looks like a bug on the Linux side of things to make sure passwords worked. This was a coding tweak that he made on the model list. So as it's trying to populate all of these models in the sequencer, all these models in the sequencer, he was able to add some parallelism. Unfortunately, it crashed on the Windows side, so he didn't enable it on the Windows side. Maybe at some point we'll figure out what the crash was about, but at this point, it's only on the Mac and Linux side. Another fix from Dan on the ISPC code again. So you might have had anomalies or crashes on the 2501 because of this. So hopefully that's been addressed. Um, Discovery. So controllers back to this option. If you hit discover, before it used to flag it'd find the same controller multiple times, perhaps on the Wi-Fi side and on the Ethernet side, or maybe it was finding it on the IP versus a host name. So the idea is to try and eliminate as many possible duplicates so that using the discover is a little more fruitful in finding what you needed to find. Mind you, Discover is only needed if you're looking for controllers that you've just installed or just lit up for the first time. Once you've got them in the controller tab, there's really no point in hitting the Discover button. Unless you're using DHCP. That's another thing. If you're using host names, if you're using IP addresses and they may have changed IPs, you might try the Discover option, see if it finds it. And this is on FPP Connect. So FPP Connect now. And that's fine. Say no. We're not going to upload sequences, so you don't need to do that. When you show FPP Connect, it used to just show you the FPP instances that were online, but you wouldn't know if maybe you had your other ones that either didn't respond or they're offline, and you might not realize it. So now they're at least going to show up on that list. You can't upload to them because, of course, they're not found, they're not active. They're not online to be able to communicate to it, but at least you know that they exist. So that list will now populate with a copy of all the FPPs that it should be on that list. Now, because most of my shows are offline right now, a lot of it times out, it doesn't find it. So here's a group of IPs that are not available because they're not online right now. So for example, if this was my real show and I meant to upload to my FPP Kurt or my Kurt Lawn or my blacktop PiCap, I could be alerted to the fact that they're not online, and I could find out why they're not online. Maybe do another rediscover, or maybe I have to turn something on, or maybe the FPP daemon is not started. At least it lets you know that there are FPPs that you have on your controller list, but are not being found by FPP Connect. So you're going to get unavailable or unsupported to show up there. Just a little message here. If you're doing the cleanup file location, so if you open up a sequence, if you have a sequence open and you say clean, I think it's under tools, cleanup file locations. What that is going to do is going to say any image or picture or shader that is outside of your show folder, it's going to copy it and place it in your show folder. So if you happen to point to stuff that's on your desktop or in your downloads directory, this will put it safely inside of your show folder so that you don't accidentally delete them. It did that sort of silently. Right now, the change was quite simple. It's just going to ring the bell that says, yep, the function has been performed, and a little message will show on the bottom left saying that it's performed. Previously, you didn't know if you actually worked. You clicked on the button to say clean up file locations, and it'd be very fast. And you're like, well, did it do anything? You had no idea. This one I want to talk to a little bit about increase the maximum size of group buffers. This was a long requested item. Quite frankly, I don't know if it helps a lot, but it just gives you peace of mind, if anything. If you look at a group And I'm going to go to my biggest group here, my everything group. And there's a value here called max grid size. And what that's supposed to mean is if you were to do a per preview, a render, like a per preview bars effect on this group, and can I draw on this? If I can see if I can draw on this, yeah, I can. If I have a per preview, it's going to try and draw a graph like this and basically a large matrix, right? And it would take that value that I think I had, it's going to take a value that was on here, 1400, and it's going to draw 1400 pixels or spots or blocks, or the grid will be 1400 by 1400. So imagine 1400 blocks over here and then 1400 down this way. So when it does say a bars effect or whatever, it's going to be able to separate this into 1400 different blocks. So if you have this very small, and I'll go an exaggeration here would say if you had it down to like a grid size of 4, for example, imagine that. So if you had it 4, we'd take the opposite extreme because it's really easy to tell. Everything here would be one color. Everything in here would be another color, say for butterfly, and everything in here would be another color. These would be the only 4 spots in this whole um, grid. You can tell that'd be very extreme. You wouldn't want that. So the opposite extreme is creating as big as you can. And now we've increased it to 4,000. So you can have 4,000 here grid size. So that means on a per preview, so in a sequencer, and excuse my mess on the screen, but if I was to drop a butterfly effect on the everything group here, and the render style is per preview, it's only per preview. It's going to draw a grid 4,000 by 4,000, and that's how many spots it can go in terms of resolution. Is that the right word? If you have default, it's going to use the pixel counts and add them all up. So it's perfect. But if you're doing per preview, it's going to use that max grid size. That is the max. It's going to try and calculate what it thinks it needs based on how spaced out you have your layout. So it's using some physical locations and says, is it more than 4,000? No, it's 3,000. Okay, it uses 3,000. So that's that. There is an entry in the view log that will show you if you've undersized it. Don't fret if you see that in your view log, but feel free if you want to increase the size just a little bit to match what it recommends, go ahead and do that. But it's not going to make a big show difference. We personally couldn't see the difference between, say, 1400 and a 3000 on some of these things. It just you could not tell the difference. But there's some users out there that were concerned about it. So it was a simple enough change to do. So we put that in. So let me clear the screen for a second. We'll go on to the next item. There we go. So that's the max grid size, and it's only for groups. And you could look at it and say, okay, everything is that one. This one's another one that's probably very similar. I might choose that number and make it a little bigger. Arches obviously would not be as wide, so you wouldn't need as big a number there. So you get the idea. And like I said, it's only for per preview, so don't fret over it. Sort and restore the controller tab order. So on the controller, some people didn't realize this, but you can move these things around. And say I don't care what channel, so you can move it around. That's going to save for next time. Now, if you reopen xLights, it'll keep the size, or not the size, I don't believe, but the order will be in this order for next time. And that's it. Very simple change. Add pop-up menus to add timing tracks to all views. So if we go to views, I know Ron at Extreme Sequences did a video on this already, so I won't spend too much time on it. But you have different views, and these views are just how you can limit what you see in each sequence or in the sequence, right? So each one is different. The master view is the only one that matters for rendering, but in here you may have add timing marks. I'm just going to add one and add another one. There you go. And add another one. Okay. So we've got, what do we got? Four total timing marks. These views are more static. They only contain what was there at the time they were created, or basically they don't hold the timing marks. They'll only hold the the models that are in here. So you would have had to go back here and edit display elements, and you would go to, we're on the flakes one. You would go and say, I want to bring this one over, and you'd show up. Um, and it was just very tedious. So especially if I have a singing, I like to have a singing view, which has all my singing props. You'd like to have all the singing tracks, for example, to show up here, which is predominantly that's all of the tracks that are in there. So what you would have to do now is you go back to the master view, and I say I want to copy or move those timing tracks, add those timing tracks to all my views. Now it doesn't make a lot of sense to, I could get really picky and say I only wanted to go to certain ones, but quite frankly, might as well just go and put them on all of them. There we you have them on the singing view. But just another note here that if I go, if I add a timing mark here, click OK, and I'm going to say this one's on singing, it will go, this one will go on here, but it also goes on the master view because everything that's in your sequence always has to go to the master view. So that automatically will go to the master view. If I go to any of these other ones, they won't show up. If I go back to singing, I could right click and let me say, just reverse out a few things. I'm going to go edit display elements. And I'm going to take that one out, that one out, that one out, whatever. Now, if I do right click on this screen and say add timing tracks to all views, it's only going to add these two timing tracks to all the views. It's not going to do the ones that are over here on the master view. It's only going to do what it sees in this view. So if I say add timing tracks to all views, it's going to take these two and make sure that they're available on all the views. So be sure you're on the one you want to be on. You probably want to do that operation on the master view, but you can do it on the other views as well. Um, and yeah, so that those are saved with your sequence. So when you save the sequence, next time you open it, they should be on those timing tracks should be available to you. Another quick fix that was added here at the last minute was add the ability to remove models from existing groups. So if you go to the layout, I have not really tried this one, but I'm going to assume it's like this. You click on a model, right click, remove from existing groups. So before I click that, yeah, okay, that's what I'm going to do. Remove from existing groups. It gives you a pop-up that says which ones do you want to remove it from. In the old, what you would have had to do in the previous release is go through and find, oh, everything, take it out of here. Go through this one, take it out of there. Now you can actually go to the model itself and figure out, okay, I don't want that to be in certain groups. And you just select ones that you want to remove from. So just a quicker pick list so that you can tell what to do. And the last one is, now this one was just no idea why this took so long to get this one in, but you go to the sequencer, so cancel out of here, go to the sequencer. It's quite simple. You just want to be able to hit the replay button so it cycles through the 30 seconds. Before you actually had to hit play and then stop, and then the replay section would work. But now you can do it right from the get-go. You don't have to do some weird clicks. It's just enabled right from the get-go. That's it for 2502. Like you said, most of this was for some quick bug fixes to get out of the way for that ISPC code. Remember, 25, the early versions of the year are usually where these anomalies happen because we take time to take a little few risks to get some new features and new code out there, and gives us some time to iron out any of the bugs before it gets into serious showtime. That's it. If you have any issues on this, let us know in the uh, issues tag. I can show you where that is. Some people have asked for that. If you find an issue or a bug, if you think it's just a user error, come see us in the Zoom room. But if you think you've got a bug that you truly want to log an issue tracker, you can go to the issue tracker, and I think you have to have a login, and you would say new issue, and you can say, I have a bug report. Try to be as specific as you can as possible. And also take a quick glance at the latest bugs to see if anything you have has been reported already. And it saves us having to chase down duplicates all the time like that. But that's it for 2502. I hope you enjoy it, and see you in the Zoom room. And that's your release notes for 2025-02.